It is 7 p.m. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the council meeting for the Alburnett City Council, Thursday, March 12, 2020, 7 p.m. I'll call the meeting to order here in the city of Alburnett. Welcome our guests, by the way. Here in the city of Alburnett, we do the Pledge of Allegiance. I will stand and lead us into the pledge as we face the flag. Those in the crowd have the option to do the pledge with us also. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll go ahead and call the roll to establish a quorum for tonight's business. I'll recognize the clerk for that, please.
Councilor Bozenberg?
Yep.
Councilor Trump?
Yes.
Councilor Sean?
Present.
Councilor Saracen here. Councilor Menson?
Present.
Let the record reflect that we do have a quorum to conduct business this evening. Do we, approval of the agenda is next. Clerk, do we have any changes to the agenda as submitted?
No.
All right. And then I'd seek a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
So
Moved by
Second.
Saracen, second by Menson. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion carries. Thank you. We don't have a deputy sheriff present, so we'll move past item number 5. If the deputy comes in, then we'll recognize him at that time. All right. We do have several public hearings tonight. The first one is for the Alburnett FY21 annual budget. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time for the City of Alburnett FY21 annual budget. Before we talk to the folks in the crowd, have we received any comments or objections written?
No.
No written or objections written. Those folks that are present from the public, do we have any comments or objections for this public hearing? Okay, then we'll go ahead and recognize council. Council members, do you have any comments or objections for the City of Alburnett FY21 annual budget for this public hearing? Hearing none, then we'll go ahead and let the record reflect that we had a public hearing for the FY21 annual budget and there were no written comments or objections. We'll go ahead and close the hearing at this time. We'll move on to the next public hearing. This is for the FY20 budget amendment. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing for the FY20 budget amendment at this time. Clerk, have we received any comments or written objections for the FY20 budget amendment?
No.
We'll go ahead and recognize the public or the folks that are present this evening. Is there any comments or objections? Hearing none, we'll move on to the council. Council members, do you have any comments or objections to the FY20 budget amendment for this public hearing?
No.
Hearing none, let the record reflect that we held a public hearing for the FY20 budget amendment and there were no comments or objections. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. We'll move on to the last public hearing for this evening. This is a public hearing for the plan specifications, estimated cost of construction, and form of contract for the Alburnett Fire Station. Clerk, have we received any comments or written objections for this public hearing?
No.
All right. Are there any comments or objections from the folks present, the public? Hearing none, then we'll move on to council. For this public hearing, we have any comments or objections from council? Hearing none, let the record reflect that a public hearing was held for the plan specifications, estimated costs, and construction for the form of a contract for the Alburnett Fire Station, and there were no written or public objections or comments for it. We'll close the public hearing at this time. All right, having completed those public hearings, we'll move on to item number 9, which is the mayor's report. I'll be brief this evening. I did want to mention a few things that are coming up in town. On April 4th, we will have several items going on, one being the pancake breakfast. I believe it's at 7 a.m. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's when it starts there at the Historical Society. Chief, I think you have Easter egg hunt at 3 p.m.
Yep.
And then you'll move on, that's over at the Martin Complex. And then I think you do your cookout, is that at 4 to 7?
Yep.
And that's going to be there at the fire station. Okay, any other events that I missed going on for that, April 4th? All right, very good. That's all the comments that I have. We'll go ahead and move on to the council reports. We'll start on the right. Councilman Bozenberg, do you have any comments or reports for the folks?
Put back this thing.
Move on to Councilman Trum.
With where we're at with the fire station, I'd like to thank all the people that sat on the fire station committee for all the time and effort devoted to that.
Very good, yes, thank you. Councilman Shantz.
None at this time.
Councilman Saracen.
Nothing for me.
Councilman Menson.
Nothing from me either.
All right, having no more reports, we'll move on to item number 11, which is the citizen comments. Here in the city of Alburnett, we have two types of citizen comments. They are for both agenda and non-agenda items. We'll do the first one is for agenda items. This is agenda items only. If you have a comment that you'd like to make on an agenda item, if it's a specific item on the agenda, you'll talk about it at a later time, but this is for just an item on the agenda that you would want to talk about. If you wish to do so, state your name and address clearly for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes to make any comments. Does anyone wish to make any comments on agenda items? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number B, which is non-agenda items. Again, if you wish to make any comments on non-agenda items, this is the time to do so. If you wish to do so, state your name and address clearly for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes to make any comments on non-agenda items. Yes, sir.
Joe Harini, 1954 County Home Road. Communications Director for the Solid Waste Agency, here to give a brief update. No, I have 5 minutes. I'll try and take three. Three things I want to make sure the City of Alburnett is aware of coming up here. FY21, our garbage disposal rates are going to be staying flat. $40 per ton for garbage coming in, and our flat fees for residents coming in to bring garbage will also remain flat. That's $10 per load for cars, SUVs, and minivans, $20 per load for pickup trucks and full-size vans coming in, and our yard waste fee will also be remaining flat, $24 per ton with a $5 minimum. Second item, I want to make sure you know, our recyclables processing contract with Republic Services is ending on June 30th of this year. We will be going out for bid soon for a recycling contract. Remember a couple years ago we talked about this. We went out, Republic was the only company that responded. They said we'll still do it. They raised our rates 80%. Recycling has not gotten better since then, it has gotten worse. There is not markets for these materials. Recycling is a commodity, so I can't tell you, we have no idea what we will get back. We will still take recycling from residents. Is there potential that we might have to charge to take recycling? We take it for no charge right now. That potential is there. I know you guys are a community where everyone gets to choose their own. Rudd is the majority of your hauler here. They could see an increase for what they have to pay to bring it in. This could be a case where people have to decide whether or not recycling is worth it to them. I will come back and report to the council down the road once we do have a new contract in place, let you know what that will mean for the residents here. Third item, landfill capacity. You may have seen some stories in the Gazette talking about the landfill filling up. Is it filling up? Absolutely. We take in 600 tons of garbage every single day. However, we do have more than 2 decades worth of capacity left. This site will close on June 30th, 2044, so we have 24 years of life left. There is an opportunity that we could possibly expand there. It would require negotiations with the City of Marion and changing our settlement agreement. That's a long process that might not even potentially happen. Our board hasn't asked Marion that question yet. It would be completely up to them. But in the meantime, we have 24 years of space left, and our board of directors is looking at options for what to do beyond 2044 if this location does close, which could happen. So those are the three main things. If there's other questions, feel free to contact me anytime. And like I said, I'll be back several months. I'll let you know what happens with the recycling contract.
One comment, and Joe, if you'll just remain for a second. Normally when we receive comments, we don't do a question and answer. However, I'm going to waive that for a second. And one clarification. Normally, annually, we receive a full presentation from you folks. We have several items this evening for fire business, which is why we deferred this time.
Yep.
But does council have any questions in reference to Brett?
I do have a quick question. What do you do, what are your intentions for the recycling building should that business go away?
So what will happen is that site, even so we close, landfill closes per our settlement agreement, that building can't even become a transfer station. Garbage cannot come into that location anymore per the settlement agreement. So what would happen is the Solid Waste Agency's charge actually ends also that day, June 30th, 2044. We were designed as a 28E organization to be there for 50 years. Now, our member communities could say they want to extend that indefinitely. It just will be operating at a different location at that time. But if like, let's say the Solid Waste Agency goes away, if there's some new technology, somebody else is doing something with the garbage, then all of our assets get redistributed out to our community members. So Cedar Rapids, Lynn County, Marion, Alburnett, everyone will get a piece of it. That's a big piece of it. Cedar Rapids has the majority of the population, so they get the biggest piece.
Other question? Thank you for
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to number 12, the written reports. We're going to recognize the fire department for not only for their regular report, I think they have some other items, and we've asked them, as the chief medical officer for the city, to also give a short briefing on the COVID-19 information. We have also released this on our website as well as the Facebook page, but I'll go ahead and recognize the fire chief at this time.
I gave you a bill for gloves and Nomex hoods, and a bill quote. Last May, you guys approved me to get 24 gloves, and I never purchased them. We're totally out now. And the 12 Nomex hoods and 24 gloves comes out to $2,664.
You have the funding for this in your budget, chief.
Yes.
Questions from council?
Earlier, I asked Steve to give us a list of what they need for the year. Get his group together and give us a list of the items that they need for the year. That way, instead of having something come up every month, we would have a layout. We knew what was going on. That would help us for future budgeting, and it just is, we would know what we were gonna be spending.
Yeah, you're good with that, chief? So we're not doing monthly approvals,
Yeah.
get whatever you need for the rest of the year in a format to us. All right, given that, with the request tonight, $2,664 for the hoods and the fire gloves for this evening. You have pleasure, council?
So moved.
Motion by Saracen to approve.
Second.
Second by Menson. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. You're good, chief. Go ahead and move on with your other items.
All right, I want to talk about the coronavirus. Now they're saying it's a pandemic, and just kind of want to inform everybody that it's our priority to serve the community while also ensuring the safety of our responders. Therefore, we encourage you to take the following precautions to help limit the spread of illness. Wash your hands often, or use hand sanitizer. Avoid touching your face, your eyes, your mouth, your nose to prevent the spread of the virus from your hands. Cover your nose and mouth with a tissue or your sleeve rather than your hands when you cough or sneeze. Avoid exposure to those who are sick or at higher risk of illnesses. If you are sick, please stay home. Clean and disinfect frequently. Use surfaces such as handles, doorknobs, countertops, sinks. Follow travel guidelines set forth in the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. The known symptoms associated with COVID-19 virus are fever, cough, and difficulty breathing. The majority of those who contract the virus will see only mild common cold symptoms. The elderly and those with pre-existing medical conditions appear to be the most vulnerable populations. If you are concerned that you have the COVID-19 or the coronavirus, contact your local primary care provider, urgent care, or hospital for further instructions. If you feel the need for immediate medical attention, go to the nearest hospital or call 911.
Very good. Thank you, chief. We appreciate that. Make sure that, I know folks watch us on YouTube and go over our council meetings, so we want to make sure that we reiterate that message as much as we can to keep our citizens safe. Any other comments, chief?
And that's it.
All right, you also have his regular report. It's included in here. I'm sure you've had an opportunity to review that as well. We'll go ahead and move on to the Public Works Director. We'll recognize him at that time. The report is also present for you.
I just wanted to hit a couple of topics that were within my report. We are without a part-time public works at this point. There's been 2 major damage incidents to city equipment plus some smaller issues, and basically let him know that he couldn't operate city equipment anymore, and when that comment was made, he declined to want to work for the city anymore. So in the meantime, purely coincidental, I have come across a high school student who's looking for a summer job, just in the beginning stages of this, but I feel like it might be a good idea to get someone hired to mow this summer, and then that way we can take our time to find the next part-time worker for a year-round position. So in the process of checking to make sure a 17-year-old he's definitely insurable, but in case there's any OSHA issues or anything like that that we need to cover, but I think we're gonna be fine. So Just wanted to let you know where we're at there. Also, as part of the fire station project, I was hoping for a bid before the meeting tonight to do complete concrete, but I just got a really rough estimate on doing, adding curb and gutter on the north side of Roosevelt and then doing an asphalt overlay. If, depending on how finances work out through this entire project with the fire station, we know that road is junk and is gonna need some help. And so, roughly, that would be from where our curb stops, which is right in this area where my cursor is, out to where this county concrete starts, which is roughly in this area. It would be curb and gutter from the first fire station driveway back to this curb, and then a 3-inch asphalt overlay. That estimate came in at $81,620 just to plant the seed, because we know once the fire station is built, especially with the construction traffic, we're gonna need to do something. Just thought I'd get a preliminary, real quick estimate so that we knew what we were talking about. Concrete, complete concrete would obviously be more money, but that outfit did not get a quote back to me. So,
That does include the curb?
that includes the curb. That's 30 inches of curb and gutter, asphalt repair to match up to that curb and gutter, and then a 3-inch overlay on the rest of it. And so it'd be a rural type shoulder on the south side of the road, just like what it is, basically. And that was the, I guess, the suggestion from the asphalt company that I talked to handle that particular situation with the load it's gonna have, et cetera.
Did we get a recommendation from MSA with that ditch that currently exists to leave that as open air?
The one by Josh's house, is that the
No,
one?
on the other side of Longworth.
On the, yeah, we haven't discussed that. And I guess we'll discuss that with our engineer, but, right
I thought that
now.
had come up at one point, that the recommendation was to leave that open air.
Yeah, and it has been so far, but now with the new culvert crossing Roosevelt, and depending on how drainage goes on the fire station program, I think that should be reevaluated. If we're controlling our water better and we have the proper size exit going out now, it's possible that could get filled in and tubed, basically, so.
Will there be an estimate for concrete on this?
Yeah, we will, and we're so early on this, I mean, this has gotta be way after the fire station's done. I just thought, as we're talking about bonding and funding, that we should have an idea. So that's the only reason I included it in my report. So it's not that it's imminent at all.
Is there a rule of thumb, is concrete 50% more?
It'll be at least 50% more, because you'd have to core out that entire road and get a sub base under it, I'm sure Ryan would agree, and then put concrete over the top. It would be considerably more, absolutely. So,
Are there spots there we're gonna have to core out anyways?
well, I'm gonna pothole patch here probably next week, just to try and get us through the construction process, but the hope is to not spend any more money on that road than we have to until the fire station's built, and then we can fix it once and for all, you know.
Yeah, like I say, that estimate won't include any coring out.
Well, no, it does, there is,
does it?
there
Okay,
is some included for, asphalt repair.
Okay,
Most of it is to make the road match up to the concrete that gets poured, but there is dollars in there for fixing soft areas.
spots
So,
out there, okay.
yeah, I was talking to the asphalt guy, and he was coming through from a meeting in Des Moines, and he said he'd stop and measure it up, and so he did, so that's where it
Just
started.
gonna set the curb high and then put 3 inches on top? Or they
Yeah, I
build
think so,
something off?
I think so, and I was just trying to get a number for tonight, Ryan, so, yep.
Guys, there are 2 storm sewer intakes,
On the end of Longworth.
so they'll be able to handle.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, if we go ahead with some, we'd have to ask Ryan if the pipe that's under Longworth could handle what we're gonna put to it.
There's a big one that comes between those houses, you'd have to do a structure and then pipe the ones from under Longworth. and do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. But the ditch could stay open and that be done as a later project too, to get the road surfaced, then, you know, that's our main goal in this, is to get the road surfaced. If that open ditch between Longworth and the second house needs to stay open for a little while to make sure it's got the, you know, ability to catch water that we need to, so be it. Then we can study it and say, because it doesn't need to be tied to the resurfacing or
Yeah.
project.
I don't think if you did that, you would have to rip out the curb if it was already in. I think you could do it behind the curb far enough that it'd be fine.
Yep. Yeah, because there's 5 feet between probably where the curb would go and the sidewalk, and then another 5 feet to the bottom of the ditch from the edge of the sidewalk down to the bottom. Yes, we'd probably wind up redoing that sidewalk, maybe, depends on how it went, but that's just part of the growing pains. So, just wanted to explain that a little bit too. It is in the report, you know, the basics of that number. And the last piece of thing that I want to add to my report, it's just for food for thought for the future. I was approached by a couple of people, if this ATV, UTV ordinance passes in Lynn County, we need to consider taking action on that here in the city. There's lots of angles from that scenario. You know, safety is a big one, and we don't even know if the county's gonna approve it yet, and that's probably their number one reason to not, if they do not approve it. The other part is the economic factor. I was approached by someone who's in the process of forming a group of ATV and UTV riders that are already hoping to plan essentially a all-terrain vehicle equivalent of a poker run. And so any city that isn't gonna allow that to come through their city limits is gonna bypass that city. So for our bars, restaurants, convenience stores, we would almost be excluding that opportunity for them. Just things to think about. I've reviewed state code. I'm not gonna take too much time tonight. I've looked at state code, I've looked at what the county's thinking about doing, and I've also looked at ATV, UTV ordinances from other cities nearby that are in counties that have the county ordinance that allows it. Just something for y'all to think about, and if you want to research, it's something that we're gonna get hit with. I would assume there'll be groups coming through the door asking us what we're gonna do with the ATV, UTV situation, so.
I went to the meeting in Central City 2 weeks ago on this matter. A lot of support. I think there was 3 people against it and probably 100 for it.
I think it's gonna happen, I really do. That's why I feel like we all should take a minute to gather information so we are prepared, because I think it will get put in front of us if we don't work on it ourselves.
I heard the opposite from the Cedar Rapids meeting though,
Oh, really?
as well as the Lynn County Sheriff has sent correspondence that he's against it in his organizations.
I was at that meeting also.
Yeah, I guess Public Health presented at the Cedar Rapids one as well as several other organizations against it, so. Is that a public vote, do we know, Mayor, or is that just the supervisors?
I thought it was at the supervisor level,
It
but
is.
yeah, I didn't think it was gonna go to public.
There's-
That's the last I heard anyway.
Bas-
Okay.
The last that I've heard is they're gathering, it got tabled in order to gather safety information from counties that have the same ordinance, and from the little research I've done, there is little or no increase in any issues with counties that have the ordinance, because the groups that lobbied for this change are basically self-policing the practice. So if they catch someone that's doing things they shouldn't, the group is kind of taking it upon themselves to say, hey, you're making us look bad, you're gonna ruin it for everybody, settle down. So I have no idea how it's gonna turn out, but that's just the research I've done in the last couple days. So just, I guess, my point is, maybe do some research, think about it, and, you know.
Those counties that have passed that, are they more of a rural county, or they?
Jones, we're surrounded, we're an
Yeah.
island,
Yeah.
everybody around us, and so yes, we're more of
But
a,
aren't, I mean, 2 or 3 or 4 counties out where we've got a lot more farm ground than we do here.
yeah.
Are those the counties that are typically having those?
Absolutely, it is more rural, but the rural counties, the agriculture sector has already had the right for several years according to state code. If you're involved in agriculture, you can ride you can use it, you can even go into towns. Anyone who is involved in agriculture and can prove it, can come into town right now and purchase gas and purchase food for the operator in in city limits, no matter what our policy is already per state code. So
So
that
there is
part,
so there is state code.
oh yeah, there is, absolutely, absolutely. And it's easy to find, all you gotta look it up is state code UTV ordinance and it'll be right there in front of you. So, and I'm just saying, I bet you there'll be people walking through the door asking us to make a decision on this, so be prepared, is my point. So, other than that, I don't think I have anything else. Does anybody have any questions for me?
All right, we'll move on to the city clerk's report. There you have a copy in your packet as well. We'll go ahead and recognize the city clerk.
With the weather being nice, we're gonna start reassessing properties for nuisance, ordinance violations. We plan to do that here shortly. I'm planning to go to a conference next month, so we'll see if it gets canceled or not with the current conditions. At some point, we need to talk about, there's a requirement for a special meeting to be held in April for our bond issuance, so we'll need to figure out a date that works for everybody for that. And then also we need to talk about having a groundbreaking out for the fire station project. And then one other thing, we, effective March 1st, which essentially was the second because the first was on a Sunday, we went to Lynn County for building permits and inspections. But anything that had been issued prior to that was still being facilitated by the city of Robbins. We just learned that the inspector in Robbins is not doing well health-wise, so he's on leave right now and they aren't sure when he's gonna be returning. So there's a card up on the council chambers for you all to sign if you would. We're gonna send a get well card to him. And then we reached out to Lynn County to see if they would be willing to facilitate the finishing out, filing the rest of the inspections that had been started in Robbins, to see if that would be a help to Robbins without having their inspector. So they responded that they are willing to take that on. So we need to see what that looks like. And then we also have a meeting with Robbins next week. We're gonna sit down with the city, the mayor, and their staff and talk about how to move forward. So just a heads up on that.
Any other comments? Any questions for the clerk? All right, then we'll move on to item number 13, the approval of the consent agenda. Is there any changes to the consent agenda?
I have 3 bills added to, you'll have a copy of those. For the record, the first one is for Town Cloud in the amount of $50. This is for our new agenda app software that we're using. And again, if you have any feedback from that, you can express that. And then one is for Coke Office Group for our printer contract. That's for $120.72. That's a quarterly invoice. And then the final invoice is from Martin Gardner Architecture. This is for our fire station architect contract, and that is for $7,079.28.
Any questions, council, about the changes? You're good?
I've already approved it.
All right, very good. Then I'd accept a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
Moved by Shantz, second by Bozenberg. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion carries. We're going to move on to item number 14, new business. And this is the resolution 03-2020-02 regarding the plans, or the final plan specifications, estimation, cost, construction, form of contract, and bidding for the Alburnett Fire Station project. In your packet, you'll see that you have a bid tabulation sheet, and you'll also recognize that we had a public hearing on this earlier with no objections. I'm going to recognize Brian from MGA to talk about this in a moment. The only thing I would add to that is, Brian, would you, at the completion of it or sometime during that, if you know, can you also project a time maybe that we would break ground so we can kind of work in what that would look like for what Danielle was talking about with a groundbreaking? I'll go ahead and recognize you at this time.
Right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the council is aware, as part of your agenda packet, we did have 6 qualified contractors bid the project. Our pre-bid final pending a construction cost had the project listed at $1,425,000 and change. We are very familiar with Huff Contracting. Our company has worked successfully with them on several projects over the years. They are more than capable of doing this project and doing a very good job with it. I've had a lot of conversations with Brett. They are anxious to get started, are confident that they can meet the schedule that was proposed as far as substantial completion on or about December 23rd, giving themselves plenty of time this year to do the work. So my recommendation would be to accept the base bid from Huff Contracting in the amount of $1,239,308. As discussed with the committee after the bid opening, we did have multiple alternate bids on the project as potential cost saving options for the council to approve. Briefly, we had one architectural alternate, which was to infill and not provide the 2 overhead doors on the north end of the building. They would be roughed in and ready to be installed at a later date, but that was only like a $3,000 savings. We had one mechanical alternate for HVAC systems, which would have eliminated the radiant and floor heating in the project for a deduct of $6,725. And then we had multiple civil-related deduct options dealing with alternate paving solutions for the parking lot, reducing the amount of parking that would be paved under the contract, and then doing some things with some sub-base preparation underneath the parking lots to give the city some options of potential deducts. Ryan can chime in here, but our mutual recommendation would be to not accept any of those alternates at this time either. Go ahead and accept the base bid. It gets everything that the building committee and the department has requested out of this project and gets it in under budget.
So I guess the only thing would be the add of the seed.
Yes.
Would Guy want to do that?
Yeah, we talked about that. I feel confident I can do it for less than that myself, even if I have to pay full price, and I'm hoping we can get some donations from local companies to get that done. We have a sod farm nearby and some other options that we do business with. Hopefully we can maybe get some discounted product or donated product. So that's my intention, is to try and do that.
I have a whole bunch of sod you could have.
Sweet.
Gonna be too late, oh.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Questions from council? I know you've had this in advance, you've had opportunity to review it. Any questions for Brian? Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, sure.
Ron Hoover, 3225 Lafayette Road. I'm here tonight as a member of the Township Trustees. And as council's aware, the township has committed $100,000 towards this project. More recently, we have made a motion to include an additional $25,000 towards acceptance of the base bid, to include some items we feel are beneficial to the department, including the in-floor heat and others. So.
And this project does include in-floor heating?
Yes.
Okay, very good, thank you. We appreciate
Thanks,
that, Ron, and the township. Any other comments? Any comments from council? I would like to note for the record that there were, I was at the bid opening, there were 6 bids. This was publicly bid. The high estimate was $1.5 million and change, and the low bid was 1.2, and we are accepting that. I'd also like to note that this is the recommendation of MGA, which we are in contract with, so.
And then additionally, typical process from this point forward, based on the outcome of the forthcoming vote by council, the contracts for the contractor are prepared. They will be stuck in the mailbox, hard copies, before I leave tonight here. He's already preparing performance payment bonds, certificates of insurance, other required documentation that'll be included with that contract. Pre-construction meeting could happen anytime inside the next 2 to 3 weeks, based off weather conditions. So in reference to your question about a potential groundbreaking anytime in the next 2 to 3 weeks up to a month,
Okay.
we can get that taken care of.
We have some
Nothing
time,
sooner.
but we
have
shouldn't
time,
wait
yes.
on that, on
Correct.
forming it up. Okay, very good. Okay, well, given that, then I would need a motion to approve Resolution 03-2020-02. Again, this resolution is regarding the final plan specifications, estimated costs and construction, form of the contract, and accepting the bid for the Alburnett Fire Station project. This is for Huff Contracting in the amount of $1,239,308.00.
So moved.
Moved by Saracen.
Second.
Second by Menson. Is there any other discussion on this? I will need it, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I feel that this is the way to go. It's gonna be complete. Everything is gonna be complete. I don't want that to be any concrete or any of that afterwards.
All right, great. This is the base bid. This gets us everything that we need.
Everything we want.
Literally a turnkey solution, and this is a long time coming, so.
I haven't been on that long enough to be involved with a lot of it, but I've been kind of keeping up with it. I'm glad, like Ron, thank you for the extra money and for, you know, like the info heat and all that. I think that's a great thing to do. I'm glad we're stepping up and going a little above and not going cheap on it, so.
Yes, and also, our citizens have really done quite a bit in contributions, and I know there's probably more coming, so. Any other comments on this, or other discussion, I mean? Hearing none, and then I'm gonna need this by roll call for the expenditure of these funds.
Counselor Rosenberg,
Yes.
Counselor Trump,
Aye.
Counselor Sean,
Yes.
Counselor Sarahson.
Aye.
Counselor Menson.
Aye.
Let the record reflect that it passed unanimously for the building of the new fire station. All right, very good, thank you, I appreciate that. All right, then we'll move on to item B, resolution 03-2020-04, authorizing the use of a preliminary official statement in connection with the issuance general obligation corporate purpose bonds, series 2020, and setting the date for the sale of the bonds. I'll go ahead and recognize the clerk on this. It's also in your packet, and we'll kind of go from there.
This is an administrative function that we need to complete in order to proceed with the bonding for the fire station project. These proceedings will set the date for the bonds, for the sale of the GO bond, and then authorize the use of a preliminary official statement. The preliminary official statement was also provided by Dorsey and Whitney, our bonding attorneys, and it's 67 pages long, so I didn't put a copy in your packet, but I have a copy if you'd like to review for your reference. Again, this is just an administrative function that will allow us to set the date for the sale of the bonds and then authorize the use of that preliminary statement provided by Dorsey and Whitney. And the bonding capacity that we had previously discussed and approved was the $900,000 15-year bond with we had talked about using $35,000 a year from our local option sales tax funds to help offset the payment of the bonds.
Any questions about the information presented on the bonds or the purpose for setting the hearing, or purpose for setting the date? Hearing none, then I accept a motion for resolution 03-2020-04, resolution authorizing the use of a preliminary official statement in connection with GO bonds, corporate purpose bonds, series 2020, and setting the date for the sale of bonds.
So moved.
Moved by Trump, second by Bozenberg. Any other discussion? I will need this by roll call, please.
Counselor Benson?
Aye.
Counselor Sarahson? Aye. Counselor Sean? Counselor Trump?
Aye.
Counselor Rosenberg?
Aye.
Let the record reflect that it passed with a quorum. We'll move on to C, which is MSA, discuss proposed housing plan using Alliant Energy Community Growth Investment Program, partnering with Springville and Central City.
All right, so, hello everybody. I brought Jim Holtz with me tonight.
Jim Holtz?
Holtz, yep. He, found, some funding opportunity for a housing plan. He's working, for a comp plan in Central City. And they were looking to do a housing plan, and he found this opportunity, and they basically stated that, a more competitive application would include you, Springville, and Central City. So I work in Springville, we work in Alburnett, and yeah, Jim's working in Central City. So I will let him explain, and you can ask him any questions you'd like.
I think Ryan just explained it all, actually. So we just kicked off a comprehensive planning process with the city of Central City. Their biggest concern, biggest issue, and what I'm hearing from a lot of our clients is housing just in general. In Central City, it's just, they just need more housing, period. I think they've got 2 existing lots left that are buildable. And so they're looking for more lots to build on. Other communities are looking for other things. But started talking to him about how the mayor there about a housing strategic plan. And then I had a conversation with a gentleman that I know in the Economic Development Department for Alliant. And he said, hey, we've got some funds for that. And he knew that we were doing work here in Alburnett and in Springville as well. And he felt that it was a close enough group. He would prefer to fund kind of a joint application as opposed to just one community. And so he said, if you want to talk to them and see if they'd want to go in together on an application, we'd probably highly consider it. So I talked to the mayor over in Central City, asked him if he was interested. He said, yeah, and we'll take the lead on it if the other 2 communities are interested. Met with Springville last month, they're interested, wanted to hear what you guys had to say. Since I met with Springville, actually, Iowa Economic Development Authority just released 2 new programs, one of them being a housing assessment program, so grant funds for that. I know the person at the state that's running that program, so I called her up, asked her some questions about it. Part of that includes bringing in Iowa State Extension to do a portion of it. I've got a call into them to get exactly what they would do so that we wouldn't duplicate any efforts, so we can see what the total scope would be, what Iowa State would do, what we would do, but we would do it jointly. The cost, I believe we gave you the scope of services and fees of what that would look like. When we were talking to Central City themselves, it was like $23,000. Bringing the 3 of you together, we're looking at like $31,500, I think is what the final figure was. The Alliant Energy Program will pay up to 50%. I don't know that they'll pay that much for this particular plan because they don't have a ton of money. So they might do something less than 50%, but that's the max that they can do. So the best that you could possibly look at is, half of 31.5 divided by the 3 communities. Now, if we can get some funding through the state as well, that program would pay up to $10,000. It requires $5,000 match, and I mentioned that you needed to contract with Iowa State Extension. Their cost is $5,000, so you'd have to be contracting with Iowa State Extension. They help facilitate a workshop that pulls together a lot of data that we would have already been doing. That's why I want to see exactly what they're going to collect so that we could take that out of our scope, so that we're not duplicating the efforts, and we would just use what they gather to continue the planning process. Tonight, all I'm looking for from you is interest. If you're interested, we'll go back to the other 2 communities, say, yeah, let's put together a grant application. I'll continue to talk with the state and try and get an application into them as well. But we would bring back the grant application for you to sign if that's something that you would be interested in, so that you would still have a yay or nay vote at that point. You would know whether we're applying for both of those funding programs or not, and how much we'd apply for. Because I'll talk to the guy at Alliant and see if they would actually give up to that full 50%, or if we should apply for something less, or apply for the full 50% and they'll determine what that amount is that they'd be wanting to give us. Yes, sir.
Do you have part of your program any refurbishing of houses? Or
Yes,
or it's just all new?
No, it would not be all new. What we would be looking at is what are the needs in the community. So we would be talking to existing realtors, existing property owners on what they have, employers from the area, not just within the 3 communities, but the major employers in the area, we would talk to them to see what they're paying their employees, so that we understand what people can afford, get an idea of who's commuting where, and determine what those employment rates basically are, the pay rates of the salaries of those people that are commuting, so we can determine what can they afford, and then we'd be doing community surveys and all of that to gather data as to what types of housing, what price ranges make sense, and then we would look at a strategy to address, where the gaps are, whether that be new single-family housing, upper story housing over a couple of, downtown buildings, rehab of existing rental facilities, or owner-occupied properties as well. The state has grant funds they've got CDBGs, Community Development Block Grant funds for owner-occupied rehab. So that's a potential source of funds to actually, implement a program if that's what the greatest need is. There's also grant funds out there for housing, there's for second-story housing, for rental housing, and owner-occupied. We talk about if there's a need to develop new, we try and identify some developers that might be in the area that would have some interest. Through the program, we would see what there might be for gaps in creating the price ranges that you need, as opposed to what the development costs are. So we'd know, hey, the city might have to come up with some incentives to bring a developer in, or maybe the city does it themselves. The central city, the mayor there, he's interested in the city, there's a 40-acre parcel, he's considering having the city buy it and develop it themselves, because the property owner is interested in selling it, but he doesn't want to develop it himself. So that's a potential for them. Other cities have done that. They've used TIF funds to develop that. There's a bank now that has a TIF monetization loan program, so that they would actually upfront those funds and have the TIF repay their loan, as opposed to the city having to come up with those funds and then repay yourself. And if a developer is interested and you were going to use TIF funds, that program could also loan those funds to the developer, so that the developer wouldn't have to upfront those funds either, and the TIF would just take care of it. So a lot of flexibility in what we can do, but it all starts with a study as to what are the actual needs, and we've laid out in the scope, there's stakeholders that we have to interview and talk to gather data. We use census information from the clerk as to what's actually going on right now, what you have, and then start looking at, okay, how are we going to meet the gaps in the need.
Thank you, Mr. Holtz. I'll reserve comment from the council here, but we'll go ahead and recognize the deputy from Lane County so he can give his report and get back on the road.
Thank you, sorry I'm late. Mr. Coles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we get you anything, a bottle of water or anything?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, very good.
Looks like we did 100 hours out of the 43 required. And it looks to be 24 calls for service.
Very good. Questions for the Lynn County Deputy and any of the information presented for this evening on the report?
Yep.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go back to the agenda item here with MSA. You've had an opportunity to, were you done?
Yeah.
Okay, you've had an opportunity to see the information in your packet and hear it. I think on this particular time, you're asking us to take it under consideration. And
Yeah, if you're interested in having us pursue a grant, let me know. If you're not, then I can just tell the other communities you're not interested at all, and we won't consider Alburnett as part of a joint effort and move forward.
as council takes it under consideration, discusses it with city staff, what is the time frame that you need an answer?
There's really no time, well, the one time frame would be the state program. I think applications are due May 1st.
May
Yeah.
1st. Okay, very good.
So we'd need some time to put that application together, so, mid-April, I'd say we'd have to say yay or nay.
Like tax day. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Holtz? Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Then we'll move on to item D, which is the resolution 03-2020-01, approval of the City of Alburnett annual budget for fiscal year 20 to 21. This is from Iowa Code Chapter 384, Section 16, which requires all cities to prepare and adopt an annual budget of expenditures and receipts for the next fiscal year. Do you have any questions about this resolution or for the clerk in reference to this item? It's mandatory, so. If there's no questions, then I'd entertain a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Sean, second by Trum. Any other discussion? We'll need this by roll call, please.
Counselor Menson?
Aye.
Counselor Sarahson?
Aye.
Counselor Sean? Counselor Trump?
Aye.
Counselor Rosenberg?
Let the record reflect that the resolution 03-2020-01 passed unanimously. We'll move on to item E, resolution 03-2020-05. This is also in your packet. An opportunity to review this. This is a resolution approving the City of Alburnett annual budget amendment for fiscal year 2019 to 2020. City of Alburnett publishes its required notice concerning the proposed amendment for the current fiscal year ending June 30, 2020 on February 25th, 2020 in one newsletter. So this is that amendment for 2019 to 2020. Any questions about this resolution?
I
Here.
did put,
Go ahead.
I did put in the packet, there's a copy of what was published for the amendments, and then I put a list of the details. Because I know when you just look at this, it only has the, each function total. So this breaks down, why we needed to amend it. We went over, where we were currently at with our budget and where we felt we needed to amend. And, also, the revenue, we did include an increase for the bond proceeds. And then we included an expenditure for the fire station project to anticipate the funds that we'll be expending this spring.
Councilman Sean, so you good with these?
Yes, I reviewed them. They're all legit, stop bogging
Very good. These have been reviewed by our financial person for council as well. If there's no other comments, we have a motion to approve resolution 03-2020-05.
So moved.
Moved by Saracen, second by Trum. Any other discussion? I'm sorry, what?
It's all right here, I mean,
All right, very good, yes.
black and white right there.
All right, then we'll also need this by roll call, please.
Counselor Rosenberg?
Yep.
Counselor Trump?
Aye.
Counselor Sean?
Aye.
Counselor Saracen?
Aye.
Counselor Menson?
Aye.
Let the record reflect, it passed unanimously. And item F, a resolution 03-2020-03 to transfer per FY 20 budget. The resolution to transfer per FY 20 budget. Again, this resolution was in your packet. I'm sure you've had an opportunity to review it. If you want to give a quick explanation on that as well for the clerk.
Yeah, I listed out all the transfers, and these again, were from our FY 20 budget, which is published. So all the numbers are from the published budget, but again, it's all kind of clunky to understand, so I have an explanation sheet which shows all the transfers, and most of it is for the payment of debt, so we're transferring to the debt service fund, to cover the payments for our GO bonds. And then we have our emergency levy fund to be transferred to our general fund.
Councilman Shantz, any issue with it?
No, it's all black and white right there.
Council, any questions? Hearing none, I request a resolution to approve 03-2020-03, the resolution to transfer for FY 20 budget. Moved by Bozenberg,
Second.
second by Saracen. Any other discussion? I'll need by roll call, please.
Counselor Menson?
Aye.
Counselor Saracen?
Aye.
Counselor Sean?
Aye.
Counselor Trump?
Aye.
Counselor Rosenberg?
Aye.
Let the record reflect it passed unanimously. We'll move on to our last item this evening, which is G, Public Works, per diem pay for using employees' personal vehicle. Recognized Public Works Director.
We started this conversation last month, just the damage to the city pickup exasperated the situation again. Not having a second vehicle that's easily used for transferring around town. It's extremely hard though to use a government mileage rate for what we do in a day. I kept track of 2 or 3 days that I was driving my own pickup while the city truck was in the shop getting the new bed put on it. Put 8 miles on average on a couple of those days, but I drove it all day. I drove it from here to the shop, from the shop out to a place, to this, you know, to the lift station and back here, and, basically I want you to consider some sort of, rate that is equitable to both of us. I mean, I don't really mind using my pickup, but if it becomes frequent, I feel like I need to be paid for it. So, the only thing that I found, I couldn't find anything online in that scenario. I mean, government rate is 57.5 cents a mile. At 8 miles, that'd be $4 to drive my pickup around town all day. So basically, the only thing I could do is try and get the best rental rate on a similar pickup, and that's $42 a day. I don't expect that either, but I don't know where to go to come up with an equitable rate for that situation. If it's one day out of a blue moon, I don't care, it's fine, it's no problem. But if we have a part-time person in place and we're needing to go separate directions on a regular basis, and or the truck is down again for whatever reason, and I drove my truck for a week while the pickup was in the shop getting the new bed on it, we need to have something in place, I feel, I guess, so that's what I'm asking for, and we don't have to have a resolution tonight, but any input on how to handle that scenario, because it is rather unique, would be greatly appreciated.
I know it's not ideal, and I actually don't like you driving your vehicle. That puts risk places it doesn't need to be. I know we have the dump truck, and I know it's not ideal, but I would prefer you drove that than your personal truck. Cause like I said, that somebody hits you, then.
I get it.
All kinds of insurance questions.
Yes, and I'm not an insurance person.
Yeah,
And
no.
I don't wanna become one.
No, and I get it, and it's
I know it's more convenient for you, I totally understand that.
yeah, it also is gonna cost the city money if I'm driving the dump truck, cause I'm not gonna drive around with that blade on. I don't care with the sander in the back, but I'm gonna take that blade on and off 100 times if the situation arises in the wintertime. In the summertime, it's not so bad. But, again, you know, there could be scenarios where there's nothing left to drive, except to get in my own personal truck. So, if you don't wanna put get a rate out there, you know, and the scenario arises that the pickup and dump truck are down, I guess we're not doing anything that day, I guess I'm gonna say I don't wanna drive my vehicle. If you have insurance concerns, and I'm not gonna get paid to use it, then we're not gonna do much on that day if that situation arises, so.
I guess one of my primary questions, and this would definitely be for insurance, is if we were to agree to some kind of per diem, is that the city accepting that insurance liability versus an IRS rate where we recognize, yes, you used your personal vehicle? I don't know if there's a difference between those two, right?
I get you, I totally get you, and it's an unusual situation and I know it, but, you know.
Same if you were to hitch up the
Mhm.
trailer for any reason to
Mhm.
a personal vehicle. I mean, I would have liability concerns both
Yeah.
directions. I don't wanna see you get in trouble.
Yeah, trailers are different because that insurance goes with the vehicle no matter who licenses or owns the vehicle, but I get the point, I totally understand that.
Let me ask people at work, we have people that work for a city, we have people that drive their personal vehicles. The city pays them X amount of dollars a month, I don't know what it is. I know they're required to carry a different insurance, so let me ask.
Yeah, and that's
I'm gonna
fine.
make myself a note to ask, to get more information, to see if, yes, we can come up with something
Yep.
if it arises.
And
I don't wanna nickel and dime it down to the 57.5 cents. I mean, I totally get it.
Yep.
But I think we need to make sure that we've got a process in place so that you're also not,
I totally get
there's
it.
no hard feelings either way and everything's done responsibly.
Yep, and it came to a head with this situation, you know, and I wasn't even terribly concerned about it until I did have a week there, and there was snow in the forecast during that week that the truck was in the shop, so I didn't really wanna peel the blade off of it's not a terrible process to take the blade off the dump truck at all, don't get me wrong, but, you know, by the same token,
Still takes time.
it still takes time, and
It's a pain in the butt.
yeah, it doesn't always go well. Taking it off is fine, going back on sometimes does not go well at all. But, just wanted to bring it up and more look for input than anything else if you have an idea what might work, so. That's all I have.
Other input?
Have we talked with our insurance agent, how's that some of those factors that come in. I mean, is that somebody we should be talking to? See what would be covered, what wouldn't be covered under some of those instances?
Yeah, I mean, I would assume if I'm driving my own, it's pretty easy. If I'm driving my own vehicle for work and there's an accident, my insurance is gonna pay for it. You know, there's no doubt about it. I can't ask the city
Yeah.
to cover me
I
in
think
my
his point is,
vehicle.
if we're paying for that vehicle, where does that line get crossed?
Yeah.
Oh,
If we're paying you $20 a day or something,
Yeah.
how's that work?
yeah, I
I
again,
think
I
it's
don't
worth a
know.
phone call to them to see if they've come across it as well.
Well, and I know I ran across a water guy from Newton that he couldn't drive city vehicles because he got an OWI, but he was able to get insured himself and drive his personal, and they made a deal, and it was a very similar situation where it was just bouncing around Newton all day and he never racked up enough miles, so they came to an agreement. Hoping maybe I can still find him, I can't remember his name, but I remember him telling me the story about it too. But, and Ryan, what were you
So
saying?
we're a private company, so take that for a grain of salt. We get mileage, the federal rate for everything we drive, but then on top of that, we get a wear and tear allowance per month. It's $50. If you drive your car to a construction site, you get the $50 for that month to wash your car and take care of the maintenance and stuff. Insurance wise, you have to send some insurance thing, you know, a statement or whatever to MSA, and they have to look over it and make sure that you're covered. If you get an accident, it is on you. It is your insurance that pays. You pay the deductible. It's your car. So that's how that's run. But I don't know if cities would have to be different, but that's what MSA has done.
I would think your insurance company's gonna wanna know you drive your vehicle for work.
Well, and that's just it. Unless you tell them that's what's happening, they're not gonna know it, but
But,
But if
Yeah,
But-
but if you get
but
into
you're-
an
but you're
accident,
too many
they
bucks.
realize.
But you're driving your car. Like, you're driving, where, it doesn't matter where, do they care where you drive it and what
Yeah.
you're driving it for? Like, you're driving your
A
car.
lot of times my insurance says to use this vehicle for business.
Yeah.
And our agreement's public, so
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
no.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the scenarios aren't often, but even just, there was times last summer when we were working on something where we had the trailer hooked up to the dump truck, and the dump truck loaded with dirt, and the skid loader working, and I had sent, last summer we had two guys, which makes it a little different, but I had sent one of them off to Waterloo with a water sample to go to the lab in the city truck, and so I drove around all that day in my pickup, you know, and you don't think about those things when they're one day at a time, but when it was 5 days worth of driving, that's when you start thinking about, okay,
Well, I like the idea of Brian checking and finding out. We can
let's
use
just do some more research, but yes, I need a
research
better,
out there. We can also figure in what he's talking about there too.
okay.
Come up with a monthly thing.
I'm surprised they give that to you. The IRS mileage rate takes in total consideration for the wear and tear on the vehicle as well as fuel when they put out that rate.
Yeah, the wear and tear allowance is for those that are actually on construction sites, because it's different than everyday mileage.
Different than being on the highway.
Yeah, it's
I work for a
driving on
government
roads.
limited as my full-time job. If I go on a trip or something like that, my business travel report has it pre-filled in what the mileage is, what the rate is, I just put it in there and then they pay me for that. I am required to give a copy of my insurance if I drive my personal vehicle. Now, I have a city-issued vehicle now, but prior to that time, I was the same way. If I had to go to City Hall for a specific incident, or I had to go here or there around thing, I didn't put in for in and around mileage because I'm in the same boat. What was I gonna get, $3 or $4? I'd do more paperwork than it was worth. I think an easier path would be just allowing like a stipend on a monthly basis, much like, I think the county gives a stipend for phone usage, and then you just go use your own phone if you want to for what they do, and then that's that, But it's what that is going to be. The problem with stipends is, let's say that the city awards you $25 a month or whatever for a stipend for the use of your vehicle for in and around mileage. You're probably eligible to, and then at that point, and then you can see where that goes from there. The other thing is, that stipend on a monthly basis, when that fee is set, 1 month you drive 100 miles, the next month you drive 2, you get the same stipend. And so, at what point, does it get worked out? That's why the mileage rule for actuals works a little better. The other thing is, as where I was prior to having a city vehicle, it concerns me that we don't have something in place. A vehicle's not that expensive, to the point that we don't have a vehicle that you can use in and around, or you can use to go on your training next month, or whatever it is. Maybe the city should consider that as well.
I'm open to any solution. Again, I don't terribly mind using my truck, I don't, but I understand all of your concerns and have some of them myself.
I get that, but you take what, sampling up to Waterloo how often?
And once a month, every single month, but there's 4 months out of the year where I make multiple trips because we're discharging from the lagoons. So, and then there's trips into the city. There's things that we can't order in that are needed on a regular basis that, you know, if I've got someone here.
We could say drive the
working-
dump truck, but the gas mileage is horrible compared to what a regular vehicle would be, or driving your personal vehicle.
Well, and in the wintertime, when you got the dump truck all geared up, most of the time there's a load of salt and sand on it. You probably don't want to jump in that and run to Menards to get, you know, the stuff for the project you're working on, waiting for the next snowstorm to come. But again, we're on and off with part-time labor too. Sometimes it's absolutely no issue, because it's just me and just Danielle, and she doesn't need to go anywhere most days. And the pickups most of the time is always running, but
What he said is you're not allowed to drive. That's what he said.
well, she's still on probation,
Special
yes.
ed.
It's just, it has become a concern of late, and don't get me wrong, I'm not pushing you to anything or being really, yes, I'm complaining a little bit, but I'm not overly upset about it. I'm just saying maybe we should work on a policy.
But is this the first time this has been an issue while you've been an employee of the city?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, I always have jumped in my own vehicle for certain things, for tiny little runs, but it has become more of an issue lately. And the pickup being down for 5 days was an accident, but it's also getting 30-some thousand miles on it now and is 8 years old, and there's no reason to trade it off, but the chances are it could be down in the shop for 2 or 3 days at a time at any given time now, just because of age and miles. And you know, the dump truck seems like it spends a week in the shop every year, even though it only gets 1,000 miles on it a year, you know, roughly. So, and it's not horrible to drive around town, don't get me wrong. It's all about what apparatus is on it at the time.
Would it be feasible to let it add up for a month and then pay once a month
A
for
lot
it?
of paperwork.
Yeah, a lot of tracking, a lot of paperwork, but let's just think about it. I mean, now that we're all aware, maybe we can come up with a good plan, you know. You know, we talked about a UTV before, and I get all your concerns about that. Maybe a small car or a small SUV or something it wouldn't help me out with some of the things that I wanted the UTV for, but it would be another set of wheels, you know, just to be able to drive. Any of those options are good, either some kind of per diem rate or another vehicle of some kind, or you know, something along those lines.
Per diem's gonna be cheaper than
Oh,
purchase,
darn
maintenance,
sure,
and insurance on
darn
other
sure it
vehicles.
is, absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, we'll, should we put it on the agenda for next month, and after we've had a little time, and I'll do a little more research, and you can too?
What's the pleasure of council on that? Is next month enough time for you to consider this?
I'd like to keep it in front of us, yes.
Yeah.
Clerk, would you place that on the council for next month for consideration?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this issue with per diem? All right, then we'll move on to old business, which doesn't exist, unless something came up. Okay, then that completes our agenda for this evening. I do want to say thank you on that. One comment for Mr. Holtz, I would ask you to be thinking about that so we can get a timely answer back to you, sir. All right? All right, very good.
Dave, do you remember we did for this housing refurbishment?
Do what?
Did we fill out a grant? The pass for housing refurbishment?
Oh, yeah,
We never got anywhere
no,
with it.
we never got anywhere with it. That was,
We never could.
I think we did that like 3 different times, and
Right.
we never qualified because
We
our
make too much money.
money was, yeah.
Average income was too high.
Average income was too high.
That was probably USDA.
So I remember it was,
I guess that's why I'm not really understanding fully what this is that you're asking for.
Right now,
It's more
it's just a study.
it's just a study, so
Yeah.
you're talking It'll cost us $5,000 to get in for the study.
The total cost for the 3 communities is $31,500. That would get split 3 ways, but if we get any grant money, it would lower that even further.
Then how did Iowa State figure in on that too? I missed that.
The Iowa State Extension is included in this grant program that the Iowa Economic Development Authority has.
That's another separate.
Yeah, 2 grants.
Yeah, so that's, their portion of it costs $5,000. Now, what they do might reduce our fee, because they might do some of the things that we were gonna do anyway. I would hope that, that they would. And so, I'm still thinking the total cost would be $31,500. $5,000 of that might go towards Iowa State Extension.
And they might do the 3 communities too at the same time you're working on them?
That's what I was going to ask them,
Okay.
is
Is
if
it
we could do a
5,000 per
joint
community
application.
or- Yeah.
Well, and I don't know that it would be 5,000 per community.
I think we need to get it sorted out.
Right, that's what I need to talk to them about that. Originally, that program just came available, so when we were talking with Central City and Springville, it was just going to Alliant,
Okay.
for their grant program. This came up, and I'm like, oh, maybe there's some additional money we can get, and then, so I'm learning more about that program, as well as the program administrator is learning
Yeah, I
about the
think we
program.
need to know more.
Is the
Yeah.
bottom line cost gonna be divided in 3 equally, or have you
Yeah,
looked at,
3
it'll
equally.
be,
It'd be
like, this
3.
community is bigger, so therefore they need more resources?
No, they're all about the same size, so it would be equally.
Okay.
It's kinda like Chester was saying, that when we got into it, a lot of times, we were kinda short
Right, yeah.
every time, so, you know, I think the last time we decided not to do it because it was.
You know, our household income per person was way too high.
Compared to Springville and
Yeah, Central City.
Yeah, for an owner-occupied housing rehab program, that you're talking about, like Springville, we did several, I think we did 2 or 3 programs that they were successful in getting a CDBG application funded. That requires that you do an income survey of the neighborhood that you want to address. And they prescribe how that survey is done, and it would have to, they want 51% of the households within the neighborhood to meet 80% of the county area median income.
Well, I know we didn't even come close to.
Well,
Lots of math.
according to our bond stuff, we're running pretty close to the county average, aren't we, as far as income? Some of that bond information you had,
Yeah.
I did look at some of it.
You did? Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, we're right even with the county as far as average income.
Okay, any other questions from council? Hearing none, I'd seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Menson.
Second.
Second by Saracen. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you.